broken record. But you know, for the first time in our nation, the federal government, Capitol Hill, has passed a piece of legislation that has required every citizen in this country to buy something. They're not allowed to do that. They can't force you to buy anything. It's unconstitutional. I feel like saying, let's all say this together now. It's unconstitutional. And of course, there are things that need to be done. I believe that the first thing that we're going to have to look to, as I believe our founding fathers began to cry out, and that is we're going to have, first of all, we're going to have to appeal to heaven. I mean, if you're a praying person, I would start praying. We need the Supreme Court to very quickly take a look at aspects of this piece of legislation and make a ruling on whether the federal government has rights, and I believe very strongly that they don't have a lot of the rights that they're taking. And if our Supreme Court does its job, in spite of how hard they're chastened by our president, if they do their job and then they're going to look that bill over, 2,700 pages, and they're going to make a ruling that says you can't, there's a lot of this stuff that you have no right to do. Now, do we have issues that need addressed in this country as far as health care are concerned? I think that we'd all agree yes. And there are some things that would help those issues. If we allow insurance companies to compete across state lines, we need tort reform. That means we need representatives that are willing to go to war with lawyers. 80% of Capitol Hill, of the House of Representatives, are attorneys. We need people that will go to war with lawyers and say we've got to put a cap on frivolous lawsuits. Yes, there are occasions when people are negligent and that there should be compensation, but the compensation right now is out of control. I mean, you go into the hospital and have a dangerous procedure done to you, and it's explained to you that a human being is going to do that procedure, and there's no guarantee, and then they end up getting sued anyway, and that's why malpractice is so high. So if we can cap those things, draw down malpractice insurance, then doctors, hospitals, nurses, medical workers, their costs, their fees can be lowered. If we can compete our insurance plans across state lines, and then those things will come down. Just those two things right there would draw down the cost of health insurance and health care in this country. Could be 20 or 25% by some expert standards. And so this is a serious issue. It's one that we do have to take a hard look at. But I think that the other aspect that we do need to remember, I mean, I understand prescription drugs are expensive. But you know, if you lived in a Mideastern country, if you lived in a nation that hated America, and you got really sick, deathly sick, and you could afford it, people that hate our country come here for health care. They don't worry about how much they spend. You know why? Because it's the best in the world. And it makes no sense to completely chuck a system that has developed and established the best health care in the world. Is it expensive? Yeah. But you know what? I would rather go bankrupt than to be oppressed by an oversized government. And I speak to you as somebody that has not health. And my wife and I haven't had health insurance for about 10 years. So I'm not sitting here by somebody that has some cushy plan and looking in the eyes and saying, deal with it. We've spent thousands of dollars for health care because of things that have arisen over the past several years. And so I understand the pain. But you know what? Like I said, I would rather go broke, lose everything, than to be oppressed by an oversized government. There's good things that we can do, but they've got to be responsible things. They've got to be common sense things. And they've got to be things that respect and protect the liberties and the freedoms of our country.
The largest county in our district is Tuscarawas County. It's also the largest Democrat county in our district. And so their hometown paper, Zach Space's hometown paper, did a poll a week ago. And they said, you know, Zach Space, he voted for health care takeover in committee, and he voted for it on the floor of the House, and then he voted against it when it was the Senate bill. And they said, well, now that he's done that, you know, voted for it, and now voted against it, how would you vote for him? And 55% of the people in his hometown and his home county said, we're going to vote against him. So you guys are informed, you know what's going on. I don't need to inform you that the healthcare takeover was wrong for our district and wrong for our nation. You know, Caterpillar came out, they said healthcare reform is going to cost them $100 million in the first year alone. Anybody want to explain to me how that's helping our economy, our jobs, or helping you get better healthcare? Because the answer is it's not. And not only that, but the healthcare reform is based on a failed system. It's based on the system that's in Teddy Kennedy's home state. look into it. It's failing. We need to be looking at systems like they have implemented in Minnesota. You as a consumer, when you go to buy a product, you typically know what you're buying. You're able to shop around, you're able to get the information you need. Only in medical care do we not give the consumer that information. And Minnesota found, not surprisingly, that when you give the consumer the information they need, not only do you drive down costs, but you drive up quality. So we need to have that so that you, the consumer, can be making informed decisions. We need to have interstate commerce. We need to be able to buy our auto insurance and our life insurance and our health insurance across state lines. We need tort reform. And just so you know, not all attorneys are personal injury attorneys. Some of us have never done that, just so you know. But we need to have tort reform. Here in Ohio, we've implemented a gatekeeper function. You have to have a doctor sign an affidavit that there's a factual basis to your medical malpractice suit before you bring it to the courthouse. It's dramatically reduced the number of junk lawsuits. We need to be looking at legislation like that that is already working, because we can drive down costs by using successful policies instead of failed policies. So that's what we need to get somebody in who's going to understand that. There's some good ideas. One good idea that I'm aware of in the healthcare reform, and that's right now 7 million uninsured are 18 to 25. Allowing them to stay on their parents' insurance is low cost, and yet it saves us a lot of money. That is a good proposal, and it could probably be tweaked and left in there. But overall, it needs to be repealed, and if we can't repeal it, we certainly need to reform it, and first and foremost, go to the constitutional parameters and look at the fact that you can't take over a sixth of the economy, you can't force the consumers to buy a product, and when we start putting those constitutional limitations on it, it's going to get scaled way back.